John Fredericks Radio Network. Joining me now is Lynn Wood, noted lawyer Lynn Wood from Atlanta, Georgia. Lynn, as you know, has filed a number of lawsuits in Georgia. He's been a stalwart supporter of the president and exposing this fraud. Lynn, welcome. Great to have you back, sir.
Good morning, John. Hope everything's good down in Cordele, Georgia.
Never better. I want to start by saying, Lynn, that I thought the hit piece that was done on you in Breitbart was despicable. It embarrassed me that I run their stuff and get Matt Boyle on my show a lot. I thought it came from McConnell's office. My listeners will tell you that I defended you in that. I thought your rally in Alpharetta was spot on. I thought they totally misinterpreted what you said because they don't want to face the truth, Lynn. I was really upset by that hit piece, and I'm done with them. I won't go to them again because I'm done. So I just wanted to put that out there yesterday, and you didn't deserve that either. I mean, they lied about you. That was the other thing, Lynn.
I'm not even sure, John, what Breitbart said. I've gotten a lot of attacks and false accusations in recent days, but I pay little or no attention to it because what happens when you're over the target, you start getting a lot of flack. So if you can't attack the message, you attack the messenger. So I don't know if it was the Breitbart piece that said I was a Democrat. I'm not. Somebody had me voting Democrat and contributing money to Democrats, and somehow I was a plant that was there to harm Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue. It's just errant nonsense. I gave Senator Perdue a significant contribution when he called and asked me for $25,000. I have donated this year, and listen, I'm not a big political giver. I have been this year because I felt like this country needed President Trump and needed conservative leadership. So I made a number of donations this year, probably over $650,000 to various political candidates, including the president and his PACs. So I'm all in for President Trump. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican, although I probably voted more often Republican in the past decades. I usually try to pick the candidate. Sometimes you have to pick the lesser of two evils, like I did when I voted for Brian Kemp over Stacey Abrams.
Mm-hmm. Lynn, let me ask you this, Lynn Wood. Yesterday was a very disappointing day for many of us. The Quislings in the state Senate, led by Cosmo man Jeff Duncan, the lieutenant governor, the president pro tempore Butch Miller, majority leader Mike Dugan, and others in leadership in the Georgia Senate, basically crushed the petition that was brought forward by the Gang of Four, Senators Beach, Ligon, Jones, and Dolezal and Cumming. They needed 29 votes in order to get to a special session that would be only around the electors and the consent decree. That was legal in the Constitution. They needed 91 votes of 106 in the House. President Trump called David Ralston, the Speaker, who was not in favor of the idea. And we understand that David told him if the Senate doesn't get him his 91. So they got 12 votes out of 29. And then they put a statement out, Lynn, that it's got to be one of the most quisling, pathetic, lying statements from a body I've ever seen. And they start out by lying to the constituents and saying that we couldn't do that because we couldn't get to 3/5. It was never about 3/5. It was about 50% plus one. So they lied in their statement, and then they had all these reasons why they couldn't do it, and they kicked the can down the road. What was your reaction to that, Lynn?
Well, I know what happened. I've heard it firsthand. They needed 29, and you're right, John, about the 50% plus one. They needed 29 senators. They had 20, so they only needed 9. And what happened is Lieutenant Governor Jeffrey Kemp, who runs the Senate in his position as Lieutenant Governor, he went to the meeting and he bullied those senators. He threatened them to take away their committee chairmanships. He threatened to strip them of all power in the next legislative session. And what he did was he scared off 8 so that it went down to 12. David Ralston, don't trust what David Ralston tells you. He lied to the president, but he really was double speaking. He told the president, "Well, if we get the Senate, I'll go along in the House." He worked for the Senate not to call for a special session. The Georgia citizens are learning who is with them and who is not. And any senator who did not support the special session is not with the people of Georgia. That senator is more interested in his or her own political career and power than the senator is interested in we the people. So it was surprising in some ways and then not so surprising in others. The Georgia legislature, the leadership of this state, Governor Kemp, Lieutenant Governor Duncan, Secretary of State Raffensperger, Attorney General Carr, the Speaker of the House Ralston, they are not supportive of the people's right to have a fair vote, an honest election, and now you simply have to ask yourself why. And we're going to find out why, and I don't think it's going to be pretty for these individuals. I think they are corrupt. The level of corruption in Georgia is amazing. It's saddening, but there's going to be a day of accountability soon for these politicians and these leaders, and it's not going to have a good ending.
Let me just read the statement that the Senate put out yesterday, one part of it that really upset me. In the second paragraph of a statement put out by the Republican Senate leadership, signed by all the senators except the original 4 that had the petition, it says, sorry, our state, well, it didn't say sorry, it says our state constitution precludes us from calling a special session due to the lack of a 3/5 majority in both chambers. That was their second paragraph. Sir, that is a lie. Do they just think their constituents are stupid or ill-informed or dumb Georgians? Or what do they think when they put out in a published press release the second paragraph of why they didn't do this is a complete and utter lie? Why would they do that?
They've got something to hide. He who has nothing to hide hides nothing. The election in Georgia was a fraud. The evidence is massive. No objective, fair-minded person can look at what happened in Georgia and conclude that Joe Biden won this election. He did not. Mm-hmm. The election, some people say the election was stolen. I tend to say there was an attempt to steal it. They're not going to get away with it. The public is being lied to from all different levels. Governor Kemp keeps saying, Mr. President, I keep asking for a signature audit from the Secretary of State. Brian Kemp is a liar. Brian Kemp has the power himself to order a special session. He won't do it. More importantly, Brian Kemp has the power to order a signature audit, a forensic audit. He put this state in a state of emergency over COVID. That state of emergency still exists. If you look at the state statute, he has vast powers, including the powers, if he wanted to, he could confiscate every voting machine in Georgia and have it forensically tested. So he could do that signature audit. He's making excuses. He's lying. And again, the question is why? Why would the governor and these leaders in Georgia lie to their constituents?
The Quislings in the Senate, the lack of, for the life of me, I just cannot fathom why they would not. You couldn't get 29 of 34 Republicans to say, yeah, let's go into session. Let's look at this. Let's change the consent decree, which is totally illegal. That was signed by Stacey Abrams, the Democratic Party of Georgia, and Brad Raffensperger. The General Assembly never saw it. State senators never saw it. So let's get to these lawsuits now. Give us a status on your lawsuit, Sydney's, and where we go from here, Lynn. What's the plan of action?
With regard to Sidney Powell's case, which I'm helping her with, she's in the process, and I believe today will file an appeal to the 11th Circuit. And she'll also file a motion, an emergency motion, to have the Dominion voting machines impounded until they can be forensically tested. It probably wouldn't even take just but a few days. So that appeal is underway. I don't know whether she'll be successful in the 11th Circuit. I believe she has a greater chance of success in the Supreme Court. because not only are our legislators and our officials in this state corrupted, there is a mass amount of corruption in our judicial system. My lawsuit I filed a few days after the election when I learned about a change that was made in Georgia law, not by the legislature, but by the Secretary of State in a backroom meeting with the Democrats led by the law firm of Perkins Coie. Check out Perkins Coie. You'll find that they've had their hands in the pie in every one of these recent election disputes. Perkins Coie is the law firm for Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton. Raffensperger made a deal. It was not approved by the legislature. Many legislators had told me themselves they didn't even know about it until I filed the lawsuit.
Right.
So what happened was the Secretary of State made substantive changes in the rules relating to absentee or mail-in ballots. Opened up the door wide for fraud. Not approved by the legislature. That is unconstitutional. No changes can be made in a state, the rules of a state election when it involves a federal election. That's constitutional United States Supreme Court law. So I believe in my lawsuit, which is now pending before the United States Supreme Court. I lost in the lower court, very suspicious opinion. I lost in the Court of Appeals, very suspicious opinion. I've now filed a petition for certiorari. I'm one voter, but I'm representing all the voters. Someone has to have standing to file a lawsuit when their vote is diluted and they are treated in a fashion that violates equal protection of the law. I don't know whether the Supreme Court will take it, but I know that my theory is the same theory as to Georgia, which is being asserted by the state of Texas in the lawsuit that it has filed with the Supreme Court involving allegations of improprieties against a number of states. This fraud is going to be exposed. It's out there wide open right now, John, for people that are looking. I actually think that they knew they were going to get caught. They wanted to get caught because part of a color revolution is to have a disputed election, drive both sides further apart until you end up with violence in the streets. I believe this country soon, within days, is going to see violence in the streets. Again, it'll look like a civil war. The country needs to pay attention, and people need to begin to prepare for what is to come in the next few weeks.
Lynn Wood with us. Lynn Wood, noted attorney in Atlanta, now being made famous by these suits that he's doing in Georgia, trying to get to the bottom of what appears to many of us to be quite a fraudulent election. I was at the hearing on, I guess it was last Thursday, in Brandon Beach's subcommittee meeting. By the way, I call him #Beach Balls. That guy he's just been a stalwart here.
He's a fighter.
He's a fighter. I mean, he's a fighter. There's a lot of quislings, and then the fighters just rise to the top because of those that are not doing anything or lying to their constituents, Lynn. But I want to get to the Texas lawsuit. Can you explain to our listeners, Lynn Wood, in layman's terms, what that suit is, the significance of it, and can it get to the Supreme Court, or can the court do what they did yesterday in Pennsylvania, which is said we're not going to deal with it? Can you explain what that is, sir?
I'll try to. I'm not an election lawyer. I've learned a lot about election law in the last month. I didn't know very much about it beforehand. I should have been paying more attention as a citizen to what's going on in our government. Let me say this, if you don't mind, though. The Pennsylvania case that was dismissed by the Supreme Court is not the Pennsylvania case that people need to be watching. There is a case pending before the court, has been for some time now, in which Justice Alito had ordered that Pennsylvania separate the ballots received on or before Election Day from the ballots and votes that were received after Election Day. The state of Pennsylvania ignored that order from the United States Supreme Court. That case is still pending. I believe that case is going to be resolved. The court will enforce the rule of law. The rule of law says that only votes cast on or before the election day, the federal election day, can be counted. They're going to throw out every one of those votes that were cast afterwards. If they've intermingled them and they cannot be differentiated, they're going to throw them all out. So that's Pennsylvania. Texas, as I understand it, is contending that its electoral votes have been diluted by fraud in the other states that have been sued. It's a little harder to explain, but as I understand it, it boils down to this. Their dilution goes to the fact that if the president is denied his victory, you don't have the vice president, in this instance, Pence. So that if there's a 50-50 tie in the Senate, you don't have President Pence to break the tie. So that impacts directly the state of Texas. So the standing argument, while it's a little bit difficult to follow, I think it has some merit. But when they attack the individual states, such as Georgia, they take the same position in their case that I'm taking in my case, that the acts of the Secretary of State were unlawful. The Georgia election is unlawful and unconstitutional. Brian Kemp may not like it. His Chinese communist buddies may not like it. But Georgia's going to be forced to have a special session if the governor does not do it after the ruling from the court, assuming I'm right, and I strongly believe I am, then he's going to disenfranchise the entire state of Georgia. Georgia, you've been around the state, John. I haven't been as many places as you, but I sense the feeling in the public. Georgia voters and Georgia patriots are outraged. This state is on the brink of, it's at a boiling point. You talk about storm the Bastille. I'm not advocating any violence. I don't believe in it. I believe there's going to be acts of civil disobedience that are nonviolent. The citizens of Georgia are not going to tolerate being lied to. They're not going to tolerate having their elections stolen. They're not going to tolerate their politicians who are corrupt and are lying to them. There's going to be some sweeping changes in the state of Georgia in the next few months, and I would not at all be surprised if Brian Kemp and Duncan and all these people are subject to a recall.
One question, I got a couple texts here. What assurances do we have that the Supreme Court will take up the Texas case, that it'll actually be heard and litigated? One couple people are saying, what if they simply say they're not going to deal with it? Is that possible?
Well, a writ of certiorari is a discretionary grant by the Supreme Court. It takes 4 justices to agree to take a case. Obviously, it takes 5 or more to win it. So I don't know. I can't recall who has the supervision over the Texas court, but I know that in Georgia, Clarence Thomas is assigned to it. So my case will first be viewed by Thomas. He'll then look at it and discuss it, and I would need 3 other people if Thomas agrees. I would need 4 justices to grant cert. Texas has got to have 4 too. I believe that one of the cases, either Texas or mine, will be accepted because, again, I have to believe that the Supreme Court will enforce the rule of law. Just like in Pennsylvania, I think they're going to throw out the votes after the election or the intermingled votes. In Georgia and the other states, I think they're going to find that the elections were unlawful, and you're going to throw out all of these Secretary of State manufactured votes, and they're going to insist that the Georgia election be decided by the rules of the state legislature. Those rules, when applied, will show that Donald Trump won a landslide victory in Georgia. He won a landslide victory across the United States. The country's got to wake up, John. That we're living in extraordinary times. It's going to take extraordinary courage and extraordinary efforts by courageous men and women so that we continue to have what we've had all of our lives but have taken for granted.
Well, we certainly didn't get courage yesterday in the Georgia State Senate. We got the exact opposite of that.
You got self-dealing, people who care more about their own power or their own prestige than they care about the citizens of Georgia, their constituents. But Georgia's going to know who they are, just like President Trump is learning, I believe, who his real friends are and who his friends are not. The president worked hard for Brian Kemp, and he's still working for Loeffler and Perdue. None of those people have been supportive of the president's efforts to reveal the fraud of this election. Donald Trump's got a long memory. This isn't the first time that he's had people abandon him. January 20, 2021, Donald Trump's going to be sworn in. He's going to be president of the United States for 4 more years. The people that abandoned him, that were disloyal to him, that lied to him, I don't think they're going to be going up to the Oval Office for tea and coffee.
Lynn Wood with us. We're going to open it up for phone calls and questions with noted attorney in Atlanta, Lynn Wood. Let's start with line number 2. Let's start with line number 2. Let's go to Mark. In Cumming, Georgia. You're on with John and Lynn Wood. Mark, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Thank you, gentlemen. Lynn, I appreciate you being on with John, and John, I appreciate you being in Georgia for so long. We getting most of our information these days from you and Banner's War Room. Hey, my question is, it looks like we have 2 tracks here. One is the path that Sydney is taking, and that's really revolved around exposing the fraud. And then we have the constitutional issues that Lynn is talking about and Texas is talking about. My question is, I guess, is twofold. On the fraud case, we have the Ware County issues, the Antrim County and Michigan issues, and yet why is that not enough proof of the switching of votes to get some cojones in the legislative body of Georgia? And what is going to be done to get more access to the machines? Because until we can actually show conclusively that votes are switching forensically with an audit of the machines, I don't think the Legislative Council is going to have the cojones to really move. We need that conclusive proof. So that's the first question on the fraud. And on the constitutional issue, do you really think that SCOTUS will have the chutzpah to overturn votes when, you have the infamous John Roberts saying, hey, the elections have consequences. I'm not going to step in here and overturn Obamacare. It just seems like they're pretty weak-kneed at SCOTUS, too. Thanks, guys.
Lynn? Lynn, go ahead, Lynn. Lynn, are you there?
Yeah, I am here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate the questions from Mark. Let me say this. You don't have to have conclusive proof. Although I've seen the evidence by affidavit, it's by firsthand observation. The machines were rigged, and the special ballots that were used for the mail-in votes, they were, in most instances, fraudulent. Some of the paper used on those fake ballots was manufactured in China. The machines were essentially owned in the software by China. They have about 75% ownership of Dominion, and they did it through a series of financial transactions that culminated in October of 2020 with a company called UBS. So we had a China election in Georgia and across the nation in large part. With respect to the proof, it's there. And that case will eventually be successful and confirmatory of the fraud that occurred. In terms of immediate action, the constitutional issues and the improprieties in the state laws, that may be, I believe, what stops this election cold in its tracks by the Supreme Court. You've got John Roberts, and I'll say it right now, and I'm a lawyer. I've been practicing law for 43 years. John Roberts is corrupt. Somebody needs to ask whether John Roberts, the Chief Justice, was John Roberts who flew on Jeffrey Epstein's plane twice. What was he doing on that plane? That's him. Why hasn't the media sought to uncover the truth of that individual flying on that plane? John Roberts is one, I believe, of 4. He'll join the 3 liberals to vote against President Trump and the election fraud. So you've got 5 other justices. I believe Clarence Thomas. I believe Amy Coney Barrett. I believe Brett Kavanaugh, and I believe that Justice Alito will be on the side of the conservatives and the rule of law. John Gorsuch could be the swing vote. I like to believe that John Gorsuch and the other 4 justices who are conservative in their philosophy, applying the rule of law, will form a 5-4 majority. But what we need in this country is courage in the Supreme Court. We need courage in our state government, our state legislators. Some of the people that you named, I've spoken with in Georgia directly. They know what happened. They know it's wrong, but they don't have the courage to cast the votes and to take action. Again, Georgia, like the president, is finding out who they can trust, who's with them, and who's not. But at the end of the day,
but
this country belongs to the people, and the people will make sure that the election turns out the way the country voted, and that was for Donald Trump.
But Lynn, you said you have the evidence, but I think the video that was shared in that hearing was powerful. That's the type of smoking gun that will give them the chutzpah in the legislative body to make action. But then Gabriel Sterling comes out a day or two later and tries to explain it all away. I don't think that if you get a forensic audit of the machines that you'll be able to explain it away. They either switched votes or they didn't. So how do we get access to those machines? I understand that the state of Georgia is arguing against the people on behalf of Dominion. How do we stop that? How do we actually get them to audit the machines?
Well, short of physically going and taking them, we only get them through a court order.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked about the legislature. I mentioned Chief Justice Roberts. The judiciary in this country is corrupt too. I don't think people have any idea of the level of infiltration of the Communist Party in all areas of our society. Mm-hmm. Some people by ideology.
Let's get to Brenda in Fort Lauderdale. Brenda,
hi.
You're on with John and Lynn Wood.
Yeah, hi. Mr. Wood. Hello?
Yes, Brenda, how are you?
Yeah, okay. Mr.
You got a
Wood,
good governor down there, by the way.
Right. Sorry?
You got a good governor down there in Florida, Ron DeSantis.
Oh, I know it. Listen, Mr. Wood, I understand what you and Ms. Powell were trying to do to convince your state people to have a special session, and you said we're not going to vote. It was kind of like a pressure tactic. But it has not worked, and there's no sign that it's going to work. At this point, Mr. Wood, can you please change your rallying cry and let the voters, tell the voters, the Republican voters of Georgia, to vote in the Senate race for Loeffler and Perdue, even though they're not helping the president and they're not doing what they should be doing, because if the Senate turns Democrat, it's going to be the end of Christianity. It'll be the end of a strong American defense. And China, they're just going to the United States under Biden will suck up to China even more. We need a Republican Senate to, God forbid, if Biden does become president, we need to check his power by having a Republican Senate. What do you say about that?
Brenda,
well, I appreciate the question, Brenda, and let me take a couple, 3 minutes and make sure that you understand my answer. I didn't tell people not to vote. I told people to demand that Loeffler and Perdue earn their vote by supporting a special session of the legislature. And if they don't earn your vote, they're not entitled to it. That was my point. Importantly, I would never, in good conscience, as a principled person, urge my fellow citizens to go vote in a fraudulent, rigged election. This is not Venezuela. But I'll tell you what people in third world countries do that have principle. They don't vote in rigged elections. If you vote in it, you validate it. If you think that they're not going to steal that election from Loeffler, if they may want Loeffler, candidly, if they don't think they're going to steal that election, then you're mistaken. They beat a landslide election victory by Donald Trump. Why would you think they're not rigging the system the same way? In fact, it's worse. In Georgia, they allow, under the Secretary of State's rule, that you can open the mail-in ballots 2 weeks in the general election before the date of the election. They could open them up and see the count. In the runoff, they changed it so they can open them up 3 weeks before. They open up those ballots, they know what the count is, and then they program in an algorithm in the voting machine to make sure the candidate of their choice wins. That's a rigged election. Mm-hmm. So you can go vote for Perdue and Loeffler if you want to, but the outcome is going to be predetermined by the fraud and rigged election.
It's going to be the same thing.
If we stop and think about it, and the Republicans who want your money and who don't care about your principles, they keep telling you, go out and vote and give money to Perdue and Loeffler. Here's what happens. If Perdue and Loeffler were to lose, as long as Trump is elected as he was, The Senate would at worst be 50-50. Pence breaks the tie. So you don't lose the Senate based on Perdue and Loeffler. They don't tell you that. But if you go in and you do a audit and find out in a new and have a new down ballot election that's done legally, maybe you have paper ballots and you count them by hand. That's easy to do, cheaper than what we're doing now. You're going to have a different result. I think Doug Collins won over 50% of the vote, but it was rigged for Kelly Loeffler. John James in Michigan, he should not have conceded. If they have a redo in Michigan, John James will be in. What happened in this election is that Trump's coattails were so great that we actually flipped the House and we added to the Senate. So if people would demand a investigation and that the election of November 3rd be based on legal, valid votes only, Trump is president, Pence is vice president, the Senate is controlled by the Republicans, and the House is controlled by Republicans. Now, you can be called a Republican. John Roberts is a Republican, isn't he? He hasn't voted Republican. They say, well, we got to hold the Senate. And then people say, we got to have Kelly Loeffler and Perdue because we got all these other people like Mitt Romney and Susan Collins we can't count on. If you can't count on them in the past, you can't count on them in the future. You can have what appears to be a 52 Republican, 48 Democrat Senate. That doesn't mean you have control of the Senate. So people need to wake up and demand an honest election, and if you are even beginning to advocate that your fellow citizens go out and vote in a Venezuela third-party style rigged election, you need to stop and think twice. You start that down the road, then you're a communist before you know it. America doesn't have rigged elections. The right to vote and to have an honest vote is essential to our democracy. If you urge people to vote in an illegal election, you're destroying our democracy, our democratic republic.
All right, Lynn, thank you. Let's get to Patrick in Fort Lauderdale. It must be Fort Lauderdale Day. Patrick, you're on with Lynn Wood.
Hey, John, how are you?
Good.
This stuff is all well and good. To me, this is a national security issue. I don't see why the president doesn't just appoint somebody like Rick Grinnell to the FBI, get rid of Ray, confiscate these machines, have a representative of Dominion, have our representatives there, and go through the machines. I guarantee you they won't show up. This is the only way it's going to be done. Nobody in the court system can be trusted. This is a joke. There's a preponderance of evidence showing fraud. Nobody cares. This special session in Georgia, what makes you think that they're going to do anything different when a special session's called? These people are bought and paid for, 100%.
All right, Patrick, thank you. You want to comment on that, Lynn?
Well, Patrick, I'm gonna urge that you have faith in we the people. I've said to people that it's not going to be decided by the Supreme Court or the state legislators. This is going to be decided by we the people. We the people have all the power in this country. We give government certain tasks to perform for us, but they work for us. What you're suggesting makes total sense, but look at the big picture, and I will urge to the people that are listening to accept the truth, not buy the lie. Donald Trump is a genius. If Donald Trump takes the action that you suggest, if he does that right after the election, the media and the communists are going to say, look at Trump. He lost the election, and he's trying to steal it now in effect by coup d'etat. So I believe that President Trump is well aware of what happened. Our military intelligence, what we are able to know about what's going on, particularly in the cyber world, will be amazing when you find it out. I think they know exactly what they did. I think they caught them. But I think President Trump is having to wait until the public hears it and is more readily amenable to the truth, that they know as a public that it was fraud. They're going to support him when he takes the actions that has been suggested by the caller. So you're going to have a day of reckoning. President Trump is not going to allow freedom to be stolen. He's not going to allow communists to take over this country. Donald Trump's lawyer, until the lawyer died in 1985, was Roy Cohen. Roy Cohen was a controversial figure. He was the lawyer for Joe McCarthy back in the McCarthy hearing days. McCarthy was a flawed man. We're all flawed. We're all imperfect. God created this country. He created it under God. He gave us the blessing of freedom. He's not going to take away that blessing. But I don't believe Almighty God is happy with this country and the way we've treated him, and we have not lived up to his teachings. And so I think the perfect father is getting ready to administer perfect discipline. But I believe that the blessing of freedom will remain. But I believe God Almighty is going to make us show him that we love him for what he did for us, and we're willing to fight for what he gave us in terms of the blessing of freedom.
Let's get to line 3. Amy in Atlanta. Amy, you're on with Lynn Wood.
Hi, Lynn. Hi, John. It's such
Hello,
a
Amy.
pleasure to be on with you guys. I am in Atlanta, and it is really devastating for Atlantans, for Georgians, to see the inactivity of Kemp, Duncan, Gabriel Sterling was really just a laughingstock, not just to Georgians, but to the rest of this country. And we're better than that here in Georgia. The one good thing that has come out of the situation, no matter what happens, is that we have now seen what's happening in Georgia. And there's a lot of patriots here that are furious. There's many of us that plan on stepping up as soon as this presidential election is remedied, stepping up and having those characters at the Capitol recalled, removed, and replaced with patriots. We cannot let this continue in Georgia. It's a disgrace for the veterans that have gone and fought. It really chokes me. I really get upset about it to see how we've been taken advantage of in this state. And I really see a lot of patriots stepping up, but I think that a majority of Georgians still do not understand what's going on. And they want us to move on. They don't want us to talk about this because I think that people don't want to face the facts that it's going to take action on our parts. I was at the rally, Lynn, I was at your rally with Sydney. That was great, John. I saw you there. I was also at the rally on Saturday with President Trump, and I just want to say this. Those of us that were chanting and really booing Perdue and Loeffler off the stage, since then I've not heard really anything from them. So apparently they didn't hear our message. But we were telling them the action that they needed to take if they wanted to earn our vote on January the 5th. Our fists were pumping. We were loud. There was no mistaking that we were definitely speaking to those two individuals. I personally do not think, when I've read the president's executive order, that we will have a vote on January the 5th. I believe that when the D&I report comes out 45 days after the election, which I believe is the 18th, Lynn, you can correct me, that there will be a confiscation by the president of those Dominion voting machines because they will have interfered with our elections as foreign influence, and I think that's what his executive order states. So we won't even have any machines to vote on January the 5th. So that election will either be stayed or we'll do paper ballots. But either way, it catches, really when people talk about whether, the caller, and I've heard many callers have said, Georgians need to show up and vote. You see Lindsey Graham now piping up and saying this, and McConnell, and definitely Lynn, you and Sydney and the AG in Texas are certainly over the target. You're causing a lot of people to become uncomfortable. But it catches in my throat that I'm not going to vote because I feel like that's my duty, not only as a Christian, but as a Georgian, to go in and vote, and they have taken that away from us. We do not have a voice after that happens. What advice can you give Georgia patriots who want to step up and have all these individuals recalled, and how we can move forward in stepping up and serving in offices here in Georgia to make our state better?
I'm not sure I could describe the situation any better than you just have. But I will tell you that what happened at the rally that I held and what happened when President Trump was in Valdosta has got to keep happening. The people that love freedom, the patriots, and there's a lot more of us than there are of them. You got to keep pumping your fist. You got to keep making your voices loud. You got to call Kemp. You got to call the U.S. Attorney's Office. You got to call the FBI, call the GBI, call these senators, jam up their phone lines, fill up their email boxes. Let them know you're not going to sit back and tolerate this kind of lie. You're not going to tolerate them ignoring you. They work for you. You pay them. They're not doing their jobs because they're dirty, they're corrupt, or they're compromised, or Kelly Loeffler. Let's just talk truth. People get uncomfortable when you talk truth. Kelly Loeffler has an Andy Warhol painting of Mao Zedong in her house. Her husband is knee-deep in the New York Stock Exchange and the London Stock Exchange. He is knee-deep in dealings with China. People think that China's good for America. China, the Chinese people are oppressed. The Chinese Communist Party is evil. There's nothing good about it.
I'm all for a new party, Lynn. I can tell you that because I'm sick of the Republican. What I saw from the state Senate yesterday, I still can't get over the feckless Quislings that just bailed on Beach in that petition. Amy, thank you for your passion. Dr. Joe, line 3. Let's get to Dr. Joe in Fairfax, Virginia. Dr. Joe, you're on with Lynn Wood.
Hi, John. Hi, Lynn. Another attorney here, 41 years of practice. I appreciate everything that you and Sydney have done because I think you've laid the groundwork for the case that I think is going to win this thing. And I hear your speeches about changing the world and the policy and the party, but right now the only guy that can do that is Donald Trump. We need to get him elected. Texas, Ken Paxton has written a brilliant motion for the Supreme Court. And by the way, John, on page 2 of the bill of the bill of complaint is a reference. It has a footnote to the Georgia Star, your newspaper. You'll be happy to know that it's included in the papers to the Supreme Court.
Thank you.
What else is brilliant about this, Lynn, is that he's taken all the stuff that all these cases have done, all the stuff that Rudy and Jenna did, you and Sydney did, and packaged it around the constitutional argument. You guys are focusing on the fraud and those kinds of things and the corruption, which is great, which we need to sort out at any point. But right now, getting Donald Trump elected, we've got to get to the Supreme Court. It's got to be a good constitutional argument. And the real place that this constitutional argument can be made is by a state against the states, because remember, the Constitution is a contract among the states. And so Texas now says, we're not being treated equally. Our voters are not being treated equally. By the corruption in these 4 states are depriving our states of their equal rights to have their vote heard, albeit the state electors. And it's brilliant. And the fact that they chose the 4 states that are all the battleground, but also think about this. They are 4 states with Republican legislatures that are not moving, partly because most of them are part-time, partly because they're all afraid of causing the riots and things which you predict and I believe would happen. And the buildings were boarded up after the election day because of the fear of that rioting if Donald Trump won. But think about what happened in Florida. The Florida case, Bush versus Gore, the Supreme Court had to order the Supreme Court of Florida to follow the law. Well, the Supreme Court now can, under constitutional principles, order those state legislatures to either decertify their electors, send no electors, and that's the way we get this pushed into the House of Representatives. What do you think?
I think you're right about the Texas lawsuit. I do think there is a contract between the states, but I will urge one other point that's not being discussed by the media. Don't forget the lawsuit that I filed. The real contract is between the people and government in the Constitution. Our right to vote has been diluted. We've had our equal protection as voters violated as people that voted in person versus the people that voted by absentee ballot. But I don't care whether it's my case or the Texas case, but I believe the Supreme Court, the supreme law in this country, is going to enforce the rule of law, even if it's by 5-4. It's still 5-4. I believe that we're going to succeed in the Supreme Court. There's not going to be an easy solution based on the ruling that the elections were unlawful. We're going to have the state legislatures meet, or we're going to have it decided by the Constitution. Take a look at the constitutional procedures for how we elect a president. It may well be decided in Congress, and Congress is controlled by Republican states versus Democratic states. So President Trump is going to be elected. He was elected. Truth is going to prevail. But this country is going to go through some difficult days. You're talking about buildings being boarded up. These people have a set number of cities. They're prepared to attack us. They're going to look like BLM. They're going to look like Antifa. They're going to be well-trained. They're going to be well-armed. This is a plan. They knew they were going to get caught. They don't care. They're not trying to take over our government by playing by the rules of our system. They're going to violate those rules. They already have. They're going to try to take this country by force. People better be prepared. I believe there's a chance there'll be a second China virus. The first virus was a biological weapon. We've been attacked. We've been attacked by an attack on our federal election. That's 2 attacks. There's going to be another one. But we're going to win because we're America. We're going to win this.
I would suggest, Lynn.
Go ahead, Joe. Go ahead, Joe.
Lynn, I would suggest to you that we've already had 3 attacks. What do you think all those riots during the summertime? That was a preview of what they have in store for us. And I don't know if you heard, John, I woke up this morning, I heard that news about the Virginia shutting people out of the State House. What is
that? It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. You know what? And we got to end this segment because we're way over, and Lynn's got to go, Dr. Joe. But basically, the Democrats in Virginia, due to COVID, they're in control of both houses. They have shut down the General Assembly to visitors. You can call a phone line and leave a message. So they're going to pass all this left-wing radical legislation, and they don't want Virginians to go to the People's House, which we pay for, that has been open for 400 years. They're going to shut it down so you can't get in. Joe, it's unfathomable what is going on in this country.
John,
and,
what did I say?
We're standing around.
John, what did I say to you when we went? I said to you, this scared me that we went so docilely in the spring. By the way, can you give Lynn my phone number and have Lynn, I'd be happy to help you do research or whatever.
I'll do that. I'll text you his number. Definitely, Joe.
Okay.
All right, okay. We're out of time. Lynn Wood, thank you. You were with us almost an hour and 15 minutes, Lynn. I know you're busy. Thank you for your time and for talking to our listeners, Lynn. Thank you for your work, and you are going to prevail in the end, Lynn. Thank you.
Thank you, John.